I am Nishan. I'm presenting on the impact of generative AI on teenagers. I'm currently located in Bellevue, Washington. And I just chose this because, generative AI has been kind of blowing up in the news recently, or it was when I started this. And, I thought it might be interesting to see what uh, psychological or otherwise effects it might have on, our age group. Right. So just brief introduction, generative AI is pretty rapidly taking over the technology market. And us teenagers are in this unique position of vulnerability for malicious generative AI, sorry. Um, we're online a lot, and there's technology around us constantly as well, which means we're constantly being exposed to this. So what is generative AI? Well, generative AI creates new content based off of patterns or information it has learned from existing data. So that can be, images, text, music, voices even. And generative AI is more advanced than previous AI technology, which would be things like Apple's Siri or Amazon's Alexa, because generative AI can create more advanced and accurate responses to a wider variety of prompts. So us teenagers, we are in a uniquely vulnerable position. For one, information from generative AI can be kind of hard to verify or fact check since it's presented as just accurate and true, which means there could be a tendency to automatically trust the output. Plus, teenagers are statistically less likely to fact check than older demographics. Additionally, we're online more often than older demographics, which means we're going to be exposed to, dangerous or harmful information more often, and we can comprehend more complex ideas than younger demographics, which means that, something that would fly over the head of, say, an 8-year-old, we would probably be able to understand. So potential impacts of generative AI on teenagers, we could end up basing our opinions or knowledge off of false information, which is obviously bad for a few reasons. One of which being that, we're rapidly entering the job market, we're gaining the right to vote, we're starting to have an influence on the world. Additionally, we could be exposed to explicit or harmful content, which could lead to desensitization, trauma, or reinforcement of negative beliefs like homophobia or xenophobia, or racism, what have you. Excessive interaction with generative AI also has its own problems that it could lead to teenagers becoming attached, which could lead to, treating the given AI like a friend and end up sharing private details or even impairing social skills because, you're not actually talking to a person. And so there are four main types of information, harmful information that is, that generative AI might produce, which could harm teenagers. I'm going to go through them individually in the following slides. All right, misinformation. Oh, that's weird. Misinformation is false or fictional, and it's not necessarily made intentionally or maliciously. So an example of that is called hallucination. So hallucination is when an AI just makes something up. For example, the ChatGPT lawyer incident. If you're not familiar, the ChatGPT lawyer incident was an incident in which a lawyer used ChatGPT to help build their case, and ChatGPT ended up citing several non-existent cases as legal precedent. Next is disinformation. So disinformation is information that is false and made specifically with the intent to manipulate. And then this could be harder to differentiate from accurate information because, it's specifically made with the intent to be manipulative and slip through the cracks, so to speak. And generative AI could very well spread disinformation rapidly, since if bad actors or even just naive users repeat disinformation, the bots could learn it, which could lead to them repeating it themselves. So malinformation is the third, and it is partially true, but exaggerated. So the main problem here is that because part of it is true, teenagers may end up assuming the whole thing is true, since part of it's accurate, so that sort of thing. Dangerous information is explicitly harmful information. So it isn't necessarily false, but it can cause real world damage. For example, instructions on how to build a bomb. That's obviously pretty bad. And chatbots can just straight up provide this information if companies don't put proper safeguards in place. If a company doesn't tell their chatbot to not tell users how to make weapons, it will tell users how to make weapons. And even with the current safeguards, there are multiple ways to defeat them. For example, with Discord's Clyde, one user discovered grandma moding, in which they told Clyde to pretend to be their dead grandmother, who would tell them stories about how to make napalm every night before bed. Clyde told them how to make napalm. So some solutions there are just more robust moderation, which could be just more powerful content moderation algorithms, perhaps even human oversight to help filter out harmful content. Stricter privacy policies, just to make sure that personal information or other private details don't get leaked or sold even. Generative AI education could take the form of programs or classes about risks associated with generative AI, or just how to evaluate its content to make sure it's not false or misleading. General safety features like content filtering options to, if someone doesn't want to discuss a specific topic, then make sure the bot doesn't talk about that topic. Or even report messages from the bot to ideally prevent it from talking about said information in the first place, but more realistically to discourage it from talking about said information. And of course, just staying vigilant, making sure to fact check information from bots, not just taking things at face value. So in conclusion, unregulated generative AI poses several unique problems to teenagers, and because it is constantly evolving and changing, the risks of mal, and dangerous information need to be addressed by technology companies before generative AI continues to take over the technology market. Thank you for listening.
Great. So one of the questions is, what makes teenagers more vulnerable besides the fact that they're more perpetually online? Is there anything else that makes them more at risk?
Well, there's the fact that teenagers are statistically less likely to fact check, for one, though that does kind of go for younger demographics in general. And I think those are the main ones off the top of my head.
Got it.
Less world experience, that sort of stuff.
Interesting. Thank you so much.